Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our virtual press briefing. On our YouTube page, we apologize for the late start. I am Sasha Gay Fraser, Senior Information Officer at the Statistical Institute of Jamaica. Today, our Director General, Ms. Carol Coy, will be presenting, or rather providing an update on the 2022 Population and Housing Census. Following Ms. Coy's report, we will take your questions and comment. For the question and answer session, Ms. Coy will be supported by our Deputy Director General, Ms. Leisha Delati-Boudier, Dr. Natalie Simpson, Director of Surveys, and Ms. Jessica Campbell, Director of Research, Design, and Evaluation Division. Without further delay, I will now hand over to Ms. Carol Coy.
Good morning, everyone. Data collection for the 2022 Population and Housing Census began in September 2022. This census marked a significant departure from traditional methods by embracing innovative technology. For the first time, several countries, including Jamaica, incorporated the use of tablet computers to collect data. Tablet computers have modernized census operations, making them more efficient and secure. However, our journey was not without challenges that were quickly identified and addressed to ensure that the census was successfully conducted. A population and housing census is critical for policy and decision making. It is widely used by researchers, businesses, and individuals to inform key decisions that impact our country's development. The operational process of every census includes not only data collection, but a post-enumeration survey to assess the data collected, identify the extent of the coverage, and address any shortcomings. Population censuses, however, do not always manage to identify every single dwelling within a country, and this has always been the experience in Jamaica. STATIN is utilizing global statistical best practices to address the challenges we are facing. Supported by our international development partners, STATIN is taking all reasonable measures to preserve the count and ensure that the key census aspects are not compromised. Several steps are being taken to assess the extent of the undercoverage, and appropriate actions will be taken to address the issues encountered. To date, census has been conducted in approximately 70% of the enumeration districts. Some of the major challenges we encountered during this round of the census included resignations and retirements of key personnel and challenges in replacing them. The staffing and recruitment issues were further compounded by a very tight labor market in which the census was executed. As unemployment rates decline, persons are less inclined to take up more strenuous and short-term jobs like data collection. A significant number of persons indicated that they were no longer interested, or they found other means of employment, deemed that the work would be too hard, and some persons failed the minimum training requirement. These issues have had a cascading effect on the operations of the census, including recruitment, training, and payment delays. The Institute was able to adjust and treat most of these issues. However, the negative publicity, particularly around payment delays and the high dropout rate of census workers, have had a significant impact on the progress of data collection. Also affecting the census were heightened concerns about privacy, security, and the proliferation of gated communities. Access to gated communities was a significant problem. Additionally, respondents in some communities were less than cooperative with the census takers and supervisors. The COVID-19 pandemic amplified the challenges countries usually face in executing the censuses. In Jamaica, this impacted the planning phase of the census, the training of census workers, and the procurement processes. All these challenges contributed to an extended data collection phase and the introduction of an abbreviated questionnaire, which we refer to as a short form, to fast-track the data collection process. It is important to note that the extended data collection and the short form will introduce certain limitations in the use of the data. Certain indicators will no longer be available at the ED or community levels. However, this is a necessary compromise as we seek to preserve the most important aspects of the census. Some census workers have expressed concerns regarding remuneration. With the completion of the main data collection by contract workers, efforts are now focused on the processing of all outstanding payments to census workers. This process is taking longer than anticipated for several reasons, including the fact that some census workers have not completed the processes needed to facilitate payments. For those yet to be compensated, the non and the partial submissions or inconsistencies of the visitation record, which is a critical part of the data collection process, pose a significant challenge. STATIN, however, has put in place internal measures to address this issue. Although the extended data collection period is unprecedented for Jamaica, it was a feature of the 2020 World Programme on Population and Housing Censuses. The issues facing this round of census were a major discussion item at several international conferences, including the United Nations Statistical Commission and the CARICOM 46th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community. In response to these challenges, the global statistical community has provided new methodological guidelines for assessing undercoverage and data quality, as well as enhanced technical support for small area estimation. STATIN has been involved in several of these initiatives at the global and regional level and has also implemented several of the solutions suggested. STATIN is also receiving technical support from UNFPA, SELADE, and the Statistics Division of ECLAC, and has already hosted one technical assistance mission. The next phase of the census includes post-enumeration activities, such as the continued assessment of the undercoverage and supplemental data collection exercises as needed. These activities are informed by recommendations from the global statistics community in response to the challenges of the 2020 round of censuses. We take this opportunity to remind the public that the census is of critical importance for the development of our country. Moving forward, with the technical support from our international partners, our focus will be on the post-data collection operations. Let me reiterate that all work undertaken by STATIN is in adherence to stringent international statistics standards, and it was with this in mind that STATIN approached international statistics bodies such as the UNFPA, SELADE, and ECLAC for support in completing this census. STATIN is committed to reaching as many individuals as possible in this census. The 2022 census has been a transformative experience for STATIN. We are grateful for the support and understanding of the dedicated staff, census workers, our partners, and the public. We remain steadfast in our commitment to ensuring the accuracy and completeness of the census data and continuous improvement of our processes for future censuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coy. We will now take your questions. Please use the raised icon feature. When you are identified, please state your name and the name of the organization you're representing. We will take one question at a time. All right, at this time, we'll take your questions. Use the raise icon feature and please identify yourselves by stating your name and the organization you are representing. I see a raised hand. For persons on YouTube who may be hearing, you may type your questions in the chat. We apologize. We are having technical difficulties with our connection this morning. But if you go ahead and type your questions in the chat, we will address them. Okay, I realize that we have a raised hand from Miss Susan Goff. Miss Goff, you may go ahead. I'm not sure if you're unmuted, Miss Goff. We're not hearing. If you're able to type in the chat, I will also relay that question to the panel. Ms. Goff, are you able to type in the chat? I see another raised hand. Oh, still Ms. Goff. All right, there is another raised hand. I am unable to see a name on screen. Can you please identify yourselves? Unmute your mic and go ahead. Oh, you're speaking. All right, just a few. If you're able to type in the chat, you may go ahead with your question. All right, I realize you're commenting in the chat. I am unable to hear your comments or your questions. If you're able to type, please type the question in the chat. All right, so I see a question here from Ms. Goff in the chat. How many people were actually counted? That's the first question.
Right. So traditionally, during a census, we don't release the preliminary count until we're finished processing the data. At this moment, we're still processing the data. What we do monitor during data collection is the coverage of the EDs and the number of EDs that we have covered. So as Ms. Coy would have said before, data collection it has been conducted in 70% of the EDs nationally. We are still processing and collating the information, so we would not be able to provide that number at this point in time, but it definitely will be provided once the processing of the information is complete.
Thank you, Ms. Delati-Bodir. Her second question, how does this compare with previous census exercise?
As the briefing I read earlier would have said, this census was, there were difficulties in this census, and it's not just a Jamaica thing, it's globally. Most countries faced issues in collecting in the usual time that we had. So that would be one of the major difficulties. We also face the issue of not getting enough census takers as we had thought, as we had planned around. So these are differences between this census and the previous census.
Thank you, Ms. Coy. There is a question from Davina. She says, good morning. A census is supposed to have at least 90% of the population counted. Based on the presentation and all the challenges outlined and known with this census, which indicates less than a 90% coverage, can you confirm if the census will be done over?
I can speak to where Davinia would have gotten her number, about the 90% from. As Ms. Coy would have said, we are in the process now of assessing the undercoverage. We are in the process right now of determining the post-enumeration activities. So for every round of census that has ever happened in Jamaica, you have the main data collection. Following the main data collection, what usually happens is that there is an assessment of the undercoverage, and if necessary, there are supplemental activities. The census is not complete. What we have stopped is main face-to-face data collection. And there is a myriad of information out there on the challenges of the 2020 round of censuses, and all countries have been having challenges. Jamaica in the last census, our coverage rate was 80 something percent. So I'm not certain, and I can't speak to where the 90% comes from. But what we're saying is that we are continuously assessing what's happening. We are continuously adjusting in light of the challenges that come up. And we are also ensuring that the conduct of the census is consistent with international standards and best practices. We are supported by our partners in the UN statistical community, and they are also providing not just technical support, but also their own independent assessment of what we're doing and are guiding us accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delati-Bodir.